Welcome to r/RedditRevenge. This is a story of someone getting back at someone with revenge after being wronged. And today we have 3 great stories, so subscribe, hit the like button, and let's begin. The first story: friend tried to get me in trouble, admitted to it on recording, then got in trouble himself for a while. The second story: Bridezilla cancels catering and terminates contract day before wedding, only to have to rehire us and pay 3 times as much for same-day service. The third story: Karen will have to drive far away from the store. The first story is: friend tries to get me fired, but I turn the tables. Context: I'm a Year 9 student, British schooling system, and go to a very good school. This is a massive privilege to have, and I'm massively thankful for it. Our school has a magazine which we print and distribute to teachers, students, and parents, and it is very popular. I am fortunate enough to be the assistant editor of the magazine. I basically format and check the magazine while making sure everyone in the committee is doing well. And it's hard work. As part of this role, I have to teach and mentor the new students and get them used to the new system. Being in the committee is like having a job, so balancing it with school is tough, and lots of newbies drop out very quick when they begin to realize that they can't handle the workload. I enjoy teaching the new guys, as it's mostly people who love writing as much as I do, and it really gives us a connection that does stick around. However, last year I had a very bad mentoree whom I dislike to this very day. Cast: me, take a guess. WI, very cool and kind teacher and head editor of the mag. AM, a-hole mentoree. BF, one of my best friends. Now, I knew AM before he joined the committee. We were friends, we'd been in town with each other a bit, and we were good mates, so I was excited to be mentoring him. The way mentoring works is that there are 7 tasks to complete and have checked by your mentor, leading up to a big review 6 weeks after one first joins. The tasks are fairly easy. Learn how to Photoshop pictures for the photographers and learning the formatting of the articles to make my life easier. Now, I teach the mentorees in a way which means that I set them a task, e.g. task 1, and it has a deadline which I will take in the work, check it, and give feedback on. It works well, and I've always done the mentoring this way. I didn't go into depth to save you from boredom, but there are different tasks for photographers and journalists. Journalists are taught to format the articles and more, whereas photographers are taught to Photoshop before submission. When I set the first task for AM, I was really confident in his ability. Because we were, and still are, at a really good school, I genuinely believed that he would do it, and I'd have no problems. However, as you've probably guessed, I was very wrong. When it was time for his first task to be checked, this happened. Me: where's the work, AM? AM: I wasn't able to do it, Mercant. Me: why? It was a fairly simple task. If you had any problems, I told you to ask me about them. AM: well, the thing is, AM takes a massive breath, and I expect the worst. My dad just got in a really bad car accident, and I've been at the hospital the past few days. I was shocked. This guy's dad was in intensive care, and I was ready to give him a hard time for not doing some work. I immediately apologized and almost had a panic attack. I gave him an extra week to do his work. I was a terrible person. I went home and sobbed about how mean I was ready to be. I came in the next day and avoided him as much as possible. At this point, I didn't even suspect a thing. When it came to his second task, and the first task as well, being checked, I was nervous but prepared. Me: how did you find the work? AM: I couldn't finish either of them. At this point, I was just peeved. He told me privately that he wasn't in the hospital as much anymore, so I was confused. Me: come on, this is starting to get silly. Your review is soon, and you haven't even started the tasks. AM: Mercant, it's because my cat got put down. It was really old, and I've had it since birth, so I was really attached to it. This really made me upset. I have 2 cats and I love them to pieces. I couldn't even imagine their death, so I told AM I was sorry, but he needed to either get the work done or take an official break and leave the committee briefly. This back and forth of work, nope, and here's why went on until literally the day before his review. I had sat down with him and spoke to him about how he had not done any of the work and had 6+ hours of work to do for the next day. He was really apologetic, but I had become totally immune to his shenanigans by this point. He'd really ticked me off. By this point, I didn't know if he was lying or not, but I had my suspicions. Then his review came around. I was terrified. You see, as his mentor, if he does badly, I get in trouble for not doing my job well enough. I'm a massive goody two-shoes. I've never had a detention, and I was petrified of getting one, as my parents would not approve. AM, WI, and I sit down, and when WI asks to see the work, AM says he hasn't got any of it. Before I can interrupt and explain the situation, AM goes on to say that he had handed in all the work, but I had said that none of it was good enough and threw it all out before the review. WI gave me a death stare. I was crapping bricks. In my first year of being in the committee, I had lied to WI about doing some work. This had been put on my report, and I got screamed at for 15 minutes straight. He said I had delayed printing by over a week, and I was incompetent, etc. We moved past it, and now we enjoy each other's company very much, and essentially if I made any mistakes, I was getting fired. I looked at AM, shocked about what he'd said, and stuttered to WI the actual situation and all the lies he'd told me. WI didn't believe me, as not so long ago, I had lied. I then made it my absolute mission to prove everything he had told me and WI wrong, but there was one problem. I didn't arrange anything over a traceable source. I hadn't emailed him or texted him, other than on Snapchat, but that deletes messages after being read. It looked like I was going to get fired, and I only had a few days to prove my innocence before I was gone. The plan, finally. That evening, I went into town with some friends. AM wasn't present, and I sat down with BF. She was texting AM on iMessage, so I told her what happened about the committee and AM. She was shocked and believed me over AM. This is when a plan was hatched. Firstly, I needed evidence, and BF gave me exactly what I needed. She took AM into town on a date, as he liked her. She then began a conversation about she heard I was being nominated for an award about my writing for the school magazine. This was actually true. I won an award for England's Young Journalist of the Year and Best Featured Article about my transgender sister. #humblebrag. BF then set her phone to record the entire conversation. This included AM admitting to screwing me over so he could eventually take my position as assistant editor. BF then sent this to me, and I stored it on my computer in Sweet Revenge. I sent the voice message to WI, and he too was shocked. He apologized profusely to me, and I told him that I didn't want him to fire AM yet, and then told him my plan. He was worried, but on board because of what he did to me. I met with AM the next day to apologize for being too harsh about his tasks and beg for him to retract his statement about me. He obviously said no. As protocol states, I had to give other members my ongoing articles, and I gave AM my award-winning transgender article and said that I had changed it so it was talking about a different girl rather than my sister. However, I actually changed it to make it horribly transphobic, like disgustingly transphobic. He thanked me and left. The next few weeks, I didn't show up to any meetings and made it seem like I had actually been kicked out, but I stayed aware of the situation in the committee and kept up to date on my articles. Because this was the kind of person he was, AM didn't even read the article I had sent him before he handed it in. So WI received a heavily transphobic and sexist article, which AM wrote supposedly. WI called AM into his room, and AM was screamed at for writing such a horrible article, and then played the voice tape back for him so he knew that he'd been caught. The head teacher of the school found out about the article AM had wrote, and AM was put in isolation. You get taught on your own in a separate room, where you spend lunch and break, etc., for a week. He was also fired from the committee immediately and got a mark on his permanent record. The next story is Bridezilla Catering Rage. I used to manage a catering company for my boss while he was undergoing chemotherapy. This is one of my first gigs where I was in charge. The bride calls me at 1 in the afternoon the day before the wedding and decides she wanted a cheaper menu. She and her husband already paid for almost everything, and it's far too late to change anything. I told her that, but she started throwing a beef fit, saying that she wants to change the steak to a chicken, and demanded we either serve chicken or charge her the price of the chicken and she will not be paying for anything extra. I informed her that according to the contract, she's to receive 150 steak lunches at a price of $50 per plate, and it also states that she can't change the menu unless she does it at least a month before the wedding. When she hears this, she flips the heck out and starts screaming at me, calling me illiterate, and telling me her fiance is a lawyer and they will sue me, etc., etc. She handed the phone over to her fiance, and he also started screaming at me, saying it's his wedding and he can have whatever he wants. They end up firing me at the moment, and I inform them that the cancellation fee is 90% of the cost of the catering, which I was already paid for, and they start screaming at me, telling me that I ain't SH, and they can get anyone to cater for them, and they're going to make me pay for it, etc. They end up hanging up on me, thank God, and I had an inkling that I should probably keep making the food, in case they call tomorrow and they want us to cater. So we finish cooking, and the next day at 7 a.m., I get a call from the groom, and he demands that I come down there to cater the wedding, or they're going to sue me for not providing service. I calmly tell the guy that they terminated the contract yesterday, and as per the termination clause on the contract, we're entitled to keep 90% of the entire cost of catering. He is raging. He didn't say anything, but I can feel how mad he is over the phone. After a moment of awkward silence, I inform him that if he would like us to cater the event, he has to do same-day catering, which is 3 times the original price I charged him. He has to pay all fees in advance. And the food depends on what we have available and ready, and we also reserve the right to refuse service. He gets really peeved off at this point, telling us this is extortion. He already paid for food, so he didn't have to pay again. I informed him again of the termination clause, and also informed him that the food was for a previous contract, and that contract had ended, and he would have to pay for it again. He ended up starting a new contract with us, and for 3 times the original price. He tried to change the menu again just to spite me, but I then made sure he knew I reserved the right to refuse service. He and his bridezilla kept everything the same down to the baby carrots, and of course the steak, all while paying me 3 times the original price if they had just stuck with the original contract. As soon as we got to the venue, before I got anything out, I made the bride and groom sign the new contract and pay me completely in advance, $22,000, and left to deposit the money. While I was gone, they harassed my caterers and threatened someone with deportation, even though they were legal. He tried to sue us later, and the judge heard the recorded phone calls, saw the contract, and told him to pay my legal fees. I looked them up on Facebook recently. Apparently they're divorced now. It's only been 3 years. And the last story is, I made a Karen drive 50 miles to get a refund. Before I start, for some background, I work at customer service as a department lead, and I'll say my hardware store practices the rule that says, we reserve the right to refuse and limit any returns for any reasons very often. With that being said, a Karen slithered into my store with a water heater that was around $800. She hissed at us, I want to return it. I asked if she had a receipt. She asks why does she need one, and I said to do the refund, since it was over $50. We would for sure need a proof of purchase. She groaned and dug around in her purse and called me a moron and etc. She was already rude for no apparent reason. I was kind of already in a pee mood that day, so I decided I'd have some fun with her being an a-hole by being an a-hole back to her. When she presented the receipt, I looked at the receipt to find any possible reason to deny a return and saw it. It was bought at a store 50 plus miles away. With items that expensive, we normally ask the customer to return to the point of sale. So I told her, you can't return this item at this store. You need to return this item at the point of sale, which is the Riverside store. When she heard this, she hissed at me in anger, something to the effect of, no, I want to return it here. I'm not driving that far for a refund. She proceeded to yell at me and my associates further, calling us rather offensive names and whatnot, until she asked for a manager. So I got one, but I made sure to call my manager who has the same mindset of denying returns just like me. When my boss came, he saw what was going on, and he was on my side. He told her the same thing I said, and she cursed us all out and slithered off to heck. As soon as she went off to the parking lot, we all began to laugh. Thanks for listening.